The twin moons of Cathis III hung heavy and pale over the slave bazaar, their cold light casting elongated shadows across the stone platforms and rusting blood channels of the market. The air smelled of scorched metal, rotting incense, and the tension of 100 species pressed too close together. This was not a place of justice or order, but a theater of cruelty, where lives were bought with minerals and sold with mockery. Present. "The next one," barked the auctioneer, a nine-eyed Thren named Marzok who stood on a dais of obsidian bone. His amplified voice slithered through the market like a venomous wind. "Lot 346, unmarked, untested, a Virian god's helper, rare, dangerous, worthless." A groan went up from the audience. Some laughed, others spat. Virians were relics of a failed empire. Beautiful, yes, with skin like celestial. Water and eyes the size of stars, but to many they were cursed, biological remnants of a race too psychic for its own good. Most were exterminated, dissected, or enslaved before puberty to prevent them from reaching maturity, where their minds could bend light or shatter thoughts. This one was already grown. She walked onto the block in silence, wrists bound, chains, humming with psionic dampeners. She held her chin high, a defiant tilt to her narrow face. Her skin was dark blue, almost black at the edges, with veins of silver that moved like slow lightning. Two smooth horns curled from above her brow, ink dark and elegant. She wore no clothing, save for a tattered wrap around her waist and a collar that pulsed whenever she exhaled. She met the crowd's gaze, as though daring them to blink. "She hasn't spoken a word since we pulled her from the wreck of the Moonshard colony," Marzok grunted. "Didn't resist, didn't plead, barely blinked. Damaged goods, if you ask me. Starting bid, 2 units of synth mineral." A voice from the back scoffed. "I'll give you a half unit. I need fresh cartilage for my vats." 3 quirks of bone marrow, laughed another. "She's too thin," a Entark merchant hissed. "Won't last a cycle." "Nothing," came a quiet voice. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Marzok turned, one eye swiveling toward the voice. "Excuse me?" The speaker stepped forward. A human, tall by human standards, with dark weather-worn skin and coal-colored eyes. His clothing was a patchwork of star-faring suits and stitched leather, dyed the color of rust. He looked like a traveler, not a slaver, not a buyer. Definitely not a warrior. He raised his hand. "I offer nothing." "Another joke, perhaps?" Marzok sneered. "This is not a place for sermons, ape. If you want to make a donation, find a church." "I'm not donating," the man said calmly. "I'm claiming responsibility. I'll take her. I offer nothing in coin, but I will take her chains into my name. You said she was worthless. Let her go." The audience erupted. Some booed, others laughed. The bidders were furious. "She's still property. Can't let him take her. That's not law." But Marzok, ever the entertainer, lifted a clawed hand. "Silence, let us see where this leads." He turned all his eyes on the man. "State your designation, human." "Tharjan Vor." "Fleet? Guild? State? None." Marzok licked his teeth. "You're unclaimed, stateless, astray. This is your final offer?" Tharjan nodded. "Yes." Marzok let out a dry chuckle. "Then, so be it. May she haunt your soul. Chains transferred. Her burden is yours. Take her and go." The crowd howled, some in disbelief, others in amusement. Chains were released. The collar clicked but stayed. She stepped down from the block. They walked through the crowd like ghosts. Him silent, her wary. When they reached his ship docked in the shadow of the canyon wall, she stopped and turned. "I didn't ask you to save me," she said. Her voice was soft, layered with harmonic tones, as if 2 people spoke at once. "You claim responsibility, but not reason. What do you want?" The agent looked at her evenly. "I want nothing from you." "That's not how ownership works. I don't own you," he replied, "and I don't think anyone ever could." She tilted her head. "So you're what? A hero?" "No," he said, "just tired of watching people burn." She studied him for a long moment before walking up the ramp into his ship. The vessel was old, stitched together from different craft. The corridors hummed with mismatched power systems, and the air carried a faint scent of citrus and ozone. She touched nothing, said nothing, only walked, graceful and precise, as though memorizing escape routes. He showed her a cabin. Sparse, clean, a bed, a terminal, no locks. "If you want to leave, I won't stop you," he said, "and if I want to stay, that's your choice." That night she didn't sleep, neither did he. She sat in the dark, her glowing eyes fixed on the terminal screen, where the ship's data archive displayed images of Earth, green forests, oceans, clouds. Thajan watched from the corridor, unseen. She whispered a word then. A word that didn't translate. The next few days passed in silence. She didn't eat, didn't speak again, but she stayed. When Thajan cleaned the ship's coolant tanks, she followed. When he patched a tear in the hull insulation, she watched, then took the patching gun from his hand and finished the job better than he had. "Have you worked on ships before?" he asked. "No," she replied. "How do you know what to do? I remember things I never learned." He nodded. "That makes two of us." Later, when he cooked his meals, dehydrated meat, grain paste, dried fruit, he always set a second plate. She never touched it, but one evening she walked past him, took a single dried fig from the tray, and returned to her cabin without a word. The next night, she took two. On the sixth day, pirates tried to board them above the rings of Juxar Delta. Fuss scrap vessel latched on, trying to override their portside locks. Thajan raced to the bridge and braced for impact. Then Sailarian appeared behind him. "No weapons?" she asked. "None that would work against 6 pirates with exosuits." "And a mag-ram." She placed one hand on the bulkhead, closed her eyes, and whispered. The ship groaned. Lights flickered. A pressure wave of something invisible pulsed through the cabin, and on the monitor the pirate vessel began to spin, slowly. Then violently, it tore itself free from the lock, its engines igniting in chaotic spirals. The pirates screamed over open comms, then silence. She opened her eyes. "They forgot I could still think," she said simply. He stared at her. "What are you?" A secret that was never meant to survive. Later, over a tray of food neither of them really needed, Thajan finally asked, "Why didn't they kill you?" She looked down at her hands. "Because I didn't let them. And because some part of them still feared what I might become," he nodded. "And what will you become?" She looked up, eyes burning with starlight. "I don't know, but I'd like to find out." "Then stay," he said. "We'll find out together." She didn't smile. Not yet, but she didn't leave either. And in the vast dark between stars, the smallest promises shine brightest. It was in the floating graveyard of Rinthal Orbitale that everything began to shift. The remnants of war hung there like bones suspended in amber, drifting hulls of annihilated fleets, rotting colonies cracked open by kinetic spears, ghost signals, repeating automated distress codes in languages long dead. Thajan had brought them here, seeking parts for his dying reactor coils. But Sailarian, she felt something else beneath the wreckage. "There are memories here," she whispered as they approached a derelict battleship with a hull fractured like glass. "Anger, regret, grief, like black fire. You can sense that?" Thajan asked, piloting gently through the metallic carnage. "It's not hard. It's loud, like echoes in a cave where no one has ever stopped screaming." He shivered. "Let's be quick." They docked with the wreck, once a Karathi dreadnought, now half-gutted and crawling with spore mold. Thajan went in first, scanning for traps. Selarin followed without hesitation, her steps utterly silent, even on twisted bulkhead plating. The silence between them had become a language, a kind of peace. That was why the moment she stopped walking, he knew something was wrong. "What is it?" he asked, turning. She didn't answer. Her eyes were wide, unfocused. "Sail." She raised a hand. A ripple moved through the air like heat on metal. Then a clang in the distance. Not decay, not accident. Footsteps. Thajan's hand slid to his. A pulse blade. "They're hunting," she said. "Who?" She didn't speak. Instead, she reached out and grabbed his wrist. In an instant, they vanished from that corridor and reappeared 20 meters deeper inside the ship. No transition, no shimmer, just absence, then presence. He stumbled. "What the hell?" "I bent the in-between," she said, letting go. Her voice trembled slightly. "I can't do it again for a while." "You just phased us?" She nodded. "I'm not even sure how I knew I could." They moved quickly now, crawling through debris-ridden corridors and whispering around corners. Thajan kept his blade ready. Solarin's hands pulsed faintly with silver fire. Then they saw it, a drone sphere hovering past the junction, its hull marked with the crest of the Lithari Order, one of the Virian's ancient enemies. But this wasn't just scavenger tech. It was a seeker, and it was scanning. Solarin's skin darkened to deep midnight. "It's not here for scrap, it's searching for me." "You were tracked?" "No," she said bitterly. "I was marked." Before Thajan could ask what she meant, alarms erupted. The drone's shriek pulsed across their auditory nerves. It wasn't sound, it was pressure. Mind pressure. Thajan gritted his teeth. "Run!" They sprinted through the wreck's ribcage of shattered steel. The drone chased, its sensors glowing red, its defense arms unfolding like skeletal wings. Lasers seared the walls behind them. "This way!" Solarin yelled. She led him through a maintenance shaft, up a broken elevator, and into a chamber. With an emergency escape beacon, it was intact, but unpowered. Thajan dove to the control panel. "I can reroute current from the wall battery." "No time," she said. "I'll do it." "You don't." Her hands sparked. No glowed. She knelt, pressed her palms to the circuitry, and screamed, not in pain but in effort. The lights surged, the beacon blared. The drone burst into the chamber and exploded, not from sabotage, from collapse. Its structure inverted as though time around it folded inward. Screaming metal compressed into itself like a dying star. Solarin collapsed. Thajan caught her. "Let's get out of here," he said, breathless. They launched back to his ship seconds later. The wreck burned behind them, consumed by a ripple of warping reality. And in the ship's medbay, Solarin opened her eyes slowly. "I remembered something," she said weakly. "What?" She looked at him, something ancient glimmering in her. Violet gaze, what they made me for. They didn't speak of it again for 3 days. Thajan flew the ship into the protective mist ring of Kuraleth, a gas giant with no satellites and no habitable terrain. But it was safe, obscured. He tended. Her wounds. She allowed it, though her pride flared like a flare every time he helped. "You need to rest," he said. "You need to stop assuming I'm breakable," she replied. "I don't," he said. "But I do think you're afraid." She looked up, sharply. Of all things, that accusation seemed to wound her the most. "I was bred to destroy starships with a thought," she said, sitting up. "To end minds before they scream. I'm not afraid." "You're not afraid of others," Thajan said gently. "You're afraid of yourself." The silence that followed was so complete, it ached. Then she said, "What if I break you too?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "My kind was supposed to bond with generals," she murmured, "to enhance them, to link. But most who bonded with us went mad. The connection was too much. They weren't meant to hold us. And if I said I wasn't like most," she tilted her head, "I'd say that's what they all said, just before they bled through their eyes and begged for silence." He chuckled, despite the tension. "I'm tougher than I look." She studied him for a long time. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" "Because you've had every chance to kill me, and you didn't. Maybe I'm waiting for the right moment. Then I'll make it worth your while to keep waiting." She looked away. But later that night, she came to him as he was repairing. the ship's internal sensors. Without a word, she touched his temple, and for a fraction of a second, he saw through her eyes. He saw her world, Virea, before it fell, oceans that whispered secrets, trees that glowed with memory, a sky filled with living constellations. And he saw her as a child, watching her siblings taken for training, one by one, never to return. Then he saw experiments, scalpels, machines drilling into her mind, her scream muted in a vacuum chamber, a voice saying, "This one is strong. Keep her lucid. We'll use her for the front lines." And finally he saw her escape, floating in a stasis pod among the debris of a sabotage prison convoy. "That's how the scavengers found her," he gasped. She pulled back. "That was a glimpse," she said, "nothing more." "Why show me?" "Because I want to believe you're real." He reached out. This time he touched her temple. "I am." They kissed that night. It wasn't passionate. Not yet. It was hesitant, slow, like stars moving closer across centuries. But it was real. And when they pulled away, she whispered, "I think I'm changing." He nodded. "Me too." The next morning, a message broke through their stealth field, encrypted, Terran code. Thagen stared at it in silence before decoding the signal. "Thagen Vor, this is the colonial bastion, Argento's blade. We know what you're carrying. Surrender the Virian, and your past transgressions will be forgiven. You have one cycle." Sailorin stepped beside him. "Your people," he nodded, "the same ones who exiled me. Will you give me to them?" He didn't answer immediately. "Then, they think I'm still loyal to a flag. They don't realize I stopped believing in lines on maps the day my sister died because of one. I won't hide behind you," she said. "If I go by choice." He turned to her. "And if we fight?" She smiled for the first time. "Then let's show them what two broken things can become." The Argento's blade arrived one cycle later, just as promised. Its presence was an insult, an earth-forged dreadnought, bristling with rail cannons and mind-fire missiles, drifting into orbit over Kuraleth's misty bands like a silver fang. Among ruins, the Terran Union hadn't deployed one of its elite Bastion-class warships in over a decade, and now it was here. For one woman, Sailorin watched it through the view screen, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "That ship," she murmured, "was built to destroy empires." "It already has," Thagen said grimly. "I served on it once, for 3 years. You know their captain." "Too well," she turned. "Will he show mercy?" Thagen laughed bitterly. "He doesn't even believe in mercy, only in clean kills and prettier lies." The message repeated every 6 hours. "Thagen Vor, final offer. Turn over the Virian. You are already condemned. Redemption is conditional upon compliance. If you do not respond by next cycle's end, we will assume hostile intent." He didn't respond. Neither did she. Instead, they prepared. Sailorin constructed a focus chamber in the ship's auxiliary hold, using salvaged memory wire and leftover psionic relays. She stood inside it for hours, meditating, surrounded by runes burned into the walls using her fingertips. The symbols pulsed slowly, responding to her heartbeat. Thagen reinforced the hull, calibrated old stealth coils, and fused 2 EMP burst cells into the exhaust shielding. He reprogrammed a pair of maintenance drones to mimic heat signatures. They barely spoke, yet said everything with glances, gestures, silences filled with meaning. A rhythm had emerged between them, beyond trust. Something older, deeper. They slept side by side. When nightmares came, she reached for his hand. When his hands trembled from stress, she placed hers over them until the shaking stopped. Their pasts had left them shattered, but now the fractures were fusing. On the second day, Thagen opened a crate in the engine room. Inside was a relic wrapped in ceramite cloth, his old armor. It was scorched, dented, the right shoulder plate marked with the symbol of the Terran Iron Front, a clenched gauntlet encasing a planet. He touched it like it was a scar. "You were their champion once," Celerine said from the doorway. "I was their hammer," he replied. "They pointed me. I crushed." She stepped closer. "And now?" "I only lift my hand to protect." She traced the emblem. "Then wear it without shame." He met her eyes. "I don't want to frighten you." "You don't," she said. "You ground me." When the attack came, it came with cold calculation. A high-frequency sonic pulse disabled their ship's stealth. Field. The Argento's blade deployed a squadron of Hunter-class drones, sleek machines built for high-G pursuit and neuro-dart interception. They came screaming into the upper atmosphere, skimming Kuraleth's haze, scanning for heat, for life, for psionic flare. What they found was bait. The drones descended on a decoy signature that mimicked Celerine's psychic frequency, one she had woven from her own blood into a shell of programmed neurons. When the first drone touched it, it collapsed in on itself. The others fired, their beams sliced into mist, then the real trap detonated, an inverted charge of collapsed plasma rigged to the unstable quantum engine at the planet's pole. The shockwave tore half the drones into molten fragments, but it wasn't enough. The Argento's blade retaliated instantly. Railguns primed, lasers locked, a transmission came through sharp and cold. "This is Captain Tern Malric of the Bastion Argento's blade. Thejan Vor, you are charged with high treason, the harboring of a classified psionic weapon, and the betrayal of Terran military codes. Your ship will be disabled. The Virian will be extracted. Prepare for boarding." Thejan stared at the screen, jaw tight. He tapped the comm. "Malric, I'm alive. I'm not your weapon anymore." There was silence. Then, "Neither is she. She belongs to no one." The boarding team came in hard. 4 exosuits, 1 psi-nullifier, 1 anti-psionic kill cannon. It was overkill, even by Terran standards. They breached the outer hull near the rear engine, but Thejan was waiting. He struck the first soldier with a concussive blast from the pulse rifle he hadn't used in years. His aim was precise, non-lethal, but disarming. The second tried to flank him. He ducked low, spun, and slammed the butt of the rifle into the attacker's chest plate, cracking it open. Celerine entered the fight, not with violence, but presence. She emerged like starlight incarnate. Her eyes were glowing white-blue, her body surrounded by ribbons of floating dust and humming energy. When she spoke, their helmets cracked. "I am not a weapon. I am the daughter of silence. I am what your fear tried to cage." 2 of the Terran. Soldiers fell to their knees. The third screamed and fired the psi cannon. It struck her directly in the chest. She didn't fall. She absorbed it. The energy bent into her body like a river into a storm drain. Her skin turned translucent, veins of light pulsing outward. The cannon sputtered and melted. Then she whispered, and the lights in the Terran suits died. The final boarder raised their hands. Thejan stepped in. "Back to your shuttle. Now." They fled. An hour later, a second message came. This time, it was audio only. "Vor, you always were reckless, but I underestimated your loyalty. She's changed you." Thejan replied, "She made me remember who I was before you turned me into a tool." "Then you leave us no choice." The screen went black. The Argento's blade began charging its spinal railgun. It would tear their ship in half from orbit. No, escape. But Celerine walked to the core of the vessel, her chamber, her sanctum, and sat at its center. She closed her eyes and called the stars. Thejan watched as the walls shimmered. The ship groaned, power surging beyond limiters. The fabric of reality seemed to bend around them. Then, movement. Not thrusters. Not warp translation. The ship phased through the space around it, through Kuralith, through orbit. It vanished from the dreadnought sights, not into hyperspace, into elsewhere. They reappeared inside a black nebula. Stars were faint here. Light struggled. Thejan collapsed to one knee. His body shook with vertigo. Celerine was bleeding from her nose and ears. You can't do that again, he said, crawling to her. I had to, she said, voice faint. They would have killed you. He touched her face. Not if I'd gone to them. You still could. She laughed weakly. And leave you to get yourself killed again. I can't keep asking you to— You're not asking, she said, gripping his hand. I chose this. You didn't save me to put me back in a box. He looked into her eyes, saw fire, saw love. He leaned in, kissed her, truly, deeply, and when they parted, her smile broke the silence. Then we keep running, she asked. No, he said, we keep fighting. The nebula was a ghost. Dark matter thickened the stars until they wept cold light, and electromagnetic storms raged unseen in silence. For most, it was a place to be avoided, a graveyard of navigation and sanity. But for Sayalarian and Thajan, it became a cradle. Their ship limped through the shadows, held together by patchwork welds and psychic glue. The damage from the orbital escape had cracked more than steel. Even the drive matrix was whispering its death throes. They had one working thruster, 2 rations, a failing life support grid, and each other. Do you ever regret it? Thajan asked as they floated near a dying red star, its light diffused like blood in water. She turned to him. Regret saving you? No. Regret choosing me. Sayalarian's lips twitched. I was sold for scraps, beaten, collared, mocked. They all wanted a god. You were the only one who saw a person. He reached for her hand. You are the strongest being I've ever known. I was made strong, she said, curling her fingers into his, but you gave me purpose. They stayed like that, hands clasped, in the glow of entropy's furnace. But peace has sharp edges, and theirs was not meant to last. They were found again, this time not by Earth. A Virian signal echoed through the nebula, a tone as ancient as their kind, distorted, glitched, but unmistakable. Solarian sat bolt upright in her bunk, eyes alight with shock and something deeper. Memory. That frequency, she whispered. I know it. Thajan was already scanning. It's coming from a derelict ring, 20 light minutes out. A Virian lattice. Still operational? She stood. Only one way to find out. They ignited the last thruster and drifted. Across the void, windless and watchful, the ring was massive, 10 kilometers across, cracked and crooked, orbiting a dead planet no larger than a moon. Its spires glowed faintly with Virian script, and as they approached, Sayalaran murmured ancient phrases under her breath. She was called Arha Talon, the Forgotten Womb, she said. A cradle for Scion-born, long abandoned after the Empyrean. Purge. You trained here? No, she said, but my memories remember it. They landed on a segment of the ring, half collapsed, and made their way inside. The air was dry, like old books. Lights flickered in patterns Thajan couldn't interpret, but Solarin did. Her fingers brushed over control panels, and the ring began to awaken slowly, like a god opening its eyes after 1,000 years of sleep. And then they heard the voice. Designation, Sayalarian Tel Vara. Unshackled, returned. A shimmering figure appeared, a projection, tall and faceless, with fractal wings and 1,000 flickering eyes. Shall the sequence resume? Sayalarian stepped forward. No, I am not your weapon anymore. Purpose remains unfulfilled. Integration. Necessary, I reject the core, I refuse the bonding. I will not become what they made me for. And yet, you have awakened us. I didn't come to serve, she said, lifting her chin. I came to finish it. The AI paused. Then, your command is sovereign. The ring obeys. She turned to Thajan. This ring was the source of the psychic web that bound Virian minds. It's the last node. If I destroy it, I break their leash forever. And if you merge with it? I become the central node, she said. A living transmitter. No more Virian will ever be bent, not by Earth, not by the syndicates, not by anyone. But what happens to you? She smiled faintly. I won't be me anymore. Thajan stepped forward, breath tight. Then we find another way. There is no other way. This place isn't just a machine, it's alive. It needs a mind, a willing one. I'm the last. You're not. Sacrificing yourself, I won't allow it. You don't control me. I love you, he said, voice breaking. Her expression cracked. So did her voice. And I love you. But love isn't ownership. I know, he said. But if you go in there, I lose you. Not just your hands or your voice. You. She reached up, touched his cheek. You found me in chains. You set me free. Let me do the same for the others. Tears welled in his eyes. He hadn't cried in years. He hadn't let himself until now. The Virian ring opened like a flower. Energy pulsed in spirals. Platforms rose and folded into each other like ancient choreography. Solarin stepped into the center. The machine spoke. Core sequence initiated. Neural fusion stabilizing. Thajan stood just outside the perimeter, watching as tendrils of light wove into her skin. She winced, but did not scream. Cognitive root forming, autonomy preserved. Then she looked back at him, her face luminous, her voice distant. I will remember you, Thajan Vor. He took one step forward. I will fight for every soul they tried to break. Another step. I will never forget the man who taught me to be more than what I was made for. He stopped at the edge, then whispered, I love you. Her light flared, and she was gone. The ring pulsed once, twice, then sent a shockwave across the void. An invisible ping that traveled farther than any weapon ever had. A cascade began across the galaxy. Dormant Virian remnants, hidden, enslaved, buried in labs and research cells, suddenly awoke, unbound. Solarian's consciousness surged across the stars. Not a weapon, a liberator, a goddess not of destruction, but of choice. Weeks passed. Thajan repaired the ship alone. No one chased him anymore. The Terran Union had gone silent after the Virian awakening, their networks destabilized by the psychic rebirth. He drifted from station to station, offering aid, building shelters, carrying Solarin's story in his bones. She spoke to him sometimes, not as a voice, but in the way stars flickered in strange patterns, in the dreams that ended with her hand in his. In the echo of every liberated Virian who looked up and whispered, She remembers us. One day, as he stood alone on a moonside ridge, watching two suns set in slow orbit, a figure approached, clad in starlight, eyes like dusk and dawn colliding. She didn't speak. She just smiled, and he knew. She had found her way home.